It's my perspective. Yeah, from my perspective. It's my perspective. Yeah, yo, am I wrong or is it just you? Or did my life show me some things that gave me my view? And if I went through what you went through, would I be you? I don't know. That's too many questions with no answer, but plenty chances for many lessons. Am I willing to learn that it's all perception? That the picture that I paint ain't the one that you sketching? So can we disagree without drawing a weapon? Long as I can understand that it's just your perspective. Yeah, it's my perspective. Yeah, from my perspective.
Live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to My Perspective Friday, episode 25.
Friday, who's counting?
So today's topic is, are there any benefits to protesting? And a lot of people don't understand, or some people do understand that, as citizens, protesting can help bring people together and demand change, changes for economics, change for social change for unions, change for everything. So we want to know with our team here, what is your perspective on?
Well, it depends. So I think people mix up when they talk about protesting because, I watched James O'Brien and it's really funny because this guy one time he called in and he says he doesn't like Black Lives Matter. And James O'Brien, who's white in English, said, why? He goes, well, when I think of it, I think of rioting and looting and burning buildings. And James O'Brien goes, have you tried not to think of that? Like, what do you mean? It's like, have you not tried not to think of right? Have you tried not to think of it? Because that's what people go to when they think of protests. And I don't want to get into the weeds of when people infiltrate protests and do things that they're not supposed to. If I'm standing on the street and I'm protesting a cause, whether that's equal wage for everybody, equal rights for everybody, and a knucklehead decides to come stand next to me and throw a Molotov cocktail in the building, you quickly put that into my protest when that is something we are not trying to be involved with. So we got to think about and clarify when we're talking about protesting. And I'll shorten it up by saying my opinion is yes, it's needed. Look, if you don't think it's needed or it does anything, then you have not paid attention to the history of anything, especially that has happened in this country.
Exactly.
You have not paid attention at all. I'm sorry. I got more to say, but I'm going to let other people talk.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest protest, let's talk about the Boston Tea Party, no taxation without representation. And that's probably one of the things that was a big protest, violent at some time, messed up the economy for the British, and it got our voices heard. A lot of people think that when they think of protesting, they're thinking of how violent it could be, and as Keone said, that there are some knuckleheads, but that ends up trying to.
The violence is acceptable. The violence is acceptable if it's for a patriotic reason.
Right.
Well, it depends on what your termination of patriotic. Is that just for one demographic, or is that for everybody? I know protesting gives people a voice. It's a powerful way to express your concerns, and it gives you strength and motivation. But Lynn, what do you think about protesting?
Oh, I think you meant something else because I was conceived during a protest, so I thought that's Hold on, Lynn. On the YouTube, your connection is still spinning. So sadly, no one heard anything you said or saw you. Can you go back out and try to come back in, and then Sean will throw it back to you when you come back in? Because that they need to hear what you just said. Okay.
Mhm.
All
Let's go up to Larry. What is your perception on protesting?
Well, needless to say, I am very anti-protesting. Uh, I I had enough of it back in the '60s. When you at that time were kind of the brunt of the protesting. I can unequivocally say I'm not a baby killer, no matter what anybody says. And I've been so anti-protest since that time. I don't believe that now that it does much. I don't think you accomplish much in this day and age. In the past, protesting was very successful. Going back to the Tea Party, you can talk about that. I don't believe it works now. And
Hold on.
protesting. And back to what you were saying, I don't know if anybody heard that, but the unions, at one time, unions were very important.
Let me see.
Now, I think they cause a great deal of problems.
Mhm.
Use the teachers union as an example. Very powerful union. And I think they're destroying the education system. But that's my opinion. But the bottom line is I am anti-protest.
Okay, Lynn.
We
I
can't
understand.
we can't see her yet, Sean.
Oh, okay. I got
Go
you.
with
I got
Sean.
you.
I'm gonna try to see what's going on with
Okay,
her connection.
Mr. Mason. You heard majority of our views on protesting.
Right.
How do you
Um,
feel about it?
Well, my opinion about protesting, I feel like it depends on the situation, like of what you're protesting about. I feel like it's not good and it's not bad, but then like Keon was saying that sometimes protesting, sometimes people be wilding out, just be going fool. And I don't know what happened back in the day because I never protested before, so I don't know too much about it. But just seeing like on the news, seeing around and stuff like that, I think it's a great benefit for our country or for what's going on. Like right now, what's going on with women with abortion and things like that, certain things. So I feel like protesting is a great benefit, but I think it depends too on the situation because, like I said, people do be going in. Like the thing with George Floyd, that was crazy. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. People was wilding out. People was shooting. They was killing.
Well,
they just
wait. Let's not be irresponsible. That's the thing I was saying in the beginning is we can't mix up the people who are deterring from the protests and the people who are doing the wrong than the people who are doing the right thing. Because it's happened since the beginning of time, since you were able to protest and stand up to anybody, whether it was a king or government. You have people that are there to do the just thing, and then you have your knuckleheads. So that's why I try to separate the two.
Gotcha.
When a hurricane happens, I was in Hurricane Andrew as a kid. You have people that are fighting for survival, and you have people that find it a good reason to go into the mall and take computers and TVs. So we got to be careful when we're marrying the two, because people who are anti-protest will use that as part of the argument. Protesting
Right,
does nothing
right.
because all it does is violence. But yet, every time we protest, then that's the time somebody wants to open their eyes and do legislative change when the protest happens. It's
Right,
almost
right.
like when we say, you've been saying, we need to stop a slow down sign on this street. And you've been saying it for years. And then finally a kid gets ran over, and guess what pops up? The slow down sign. Why do we have to get to the protesting to get things done? And that's the thing. In today and age, it's still been an effective tool, because what happens is we watch the protests, we watch the violence that may happen, and we talk about it. But after it's over, nobody talks about the legislative changes that have come after the protest. There's no follow up in mass because that stuff's not entertaining. No one wants to tune into the news to watch somebody break down all the changes because of this protest.
Right.
So we think, well, what did that accomplish? Well, it accomplished a lot. You just don't know because you didn't take the time to go research Deshaun's word and find out what effective changes happened because of that protest that just happened.
Right, right. And Dr. Martin Luther King has one statement. He says that one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And, using the word moral, meaning that using your voice to affect change, I believe that protests have actually helped everybody here that's on this My Perspective Friday. However, I understand what Larry's talking about because, sometimes the badness overtakes everything. And Larry had mentioned one thing, and he stated that he doesn't think that protest doesn't bring about change. And I would agree. There are times when protesting leads to destruction as opposed to change for the better.
We can see you, Lynn. Keep going, Sean. I just wanted to hear that.
Okay, no problem. Of course, protesting can lead to unemployment for some people because when people do start protesting, different organizations, MNCs, I'm talking about multinational corporations that see these type of people, that see these people protesting, they got a target on them. And of course, as Larry stated, that it can generate disorder. But as Keone stated, that we had to somehow use that one fine line to say, okay, this is why we are protesting. This is our voice that we want to have heard. But we need to make sure that we police up our own actions. So if I see Deshaun out there, throwing Molotov cocktails out there, I'm gonna make sure that he gets arrested. You do have some people that infiltrate protests and make it look like certain organizations that are protesting are the bad people. But I wanted to get back with Lynn because you had stated something very important about being a protest baby.
Yes, I am a protest baby. I have been protesting and protest since I was 5 years old. I have been a part of protests for desegregating lunch counters. I have been a part of protests for teachers unions. I've been a part of protests for desegregation against schools. I've been a part of major protests for breaking down the apartheid system. Yes, protests work. It is unfortunate that we have too many disruptors that often jump in the middle, cause all kinds of chaos, and that gets confused with the overall purpose and intent of the protest. Part of protesting is the opportunity for your voice and needs to be heard. And when they are not heard, we know change will not come about. But we have already seen throughout the country, throughout the world, what happens when you protest. Change can occur. The unfortunate part now is we just have too many disruptors that want to intervene and confuse the situation, when the bottom line is that is when the most damage to humankind, civilization, the world, politics occurs, when chaos is happening. Because decisions, laws are made in the middle of chaos.
Well, you know what? To what she's saying, though, a lot of times, even when it's not the distractors, when we have seen violent protests, like after the Rodney King incident, Sometimes and I'm not just talking about Black people, I'm talking about any community, whether it's women, whether it's men, whether it's Irish, whether it's Italian, any group of people who have been clamoring for something to happen for so long and it's not happening eventually gets to that point. And that's the importance of stopping it, because they get into the mode of, well, since you ain't listening, I'm going to make you listen. And I understand that. And I understand Larry's point too, because I served in Iraq twice. I went to Bosnia. And when I came back, I didn't have anybody protesting, calling me names, so that might affect me differently. I mean, Larry was in the military at a time where, hey, whether he chose to sign up or they made him do it, he didn't go over there to go to the beach. He wasn't on vacation. Right. And he's over there taking orders, doing something he may or may not want to do. And then when you come back home to your country, and then you're getting spat on and called names, and no one's paying attention or asking you, what did you go through? What is the damage that we've done to you? But you're taking all your frustrations on me. I can see his point of having disdain for protests. Because some people might look and go, well, no one's arguing at Larry for saying that, but I get where his point is coming from. I didn't have that experience, because as Black people, we always tell people, look through our eyes. We're trying to explain our experience. So if someone else is explaining their experience, sometimes we got to do the same thing.
Exactly.
I'm looking at it through his eyes. And with protests, we also have to stop making our own narratives. When someone's protesting and telling you why they're protesting, don't shift it into something else. If somebody's taking a knee and telling you, I'm doing it for police brutality, I'm telling you in plain English why I'm doing it, and you want to bring up you're doing it because of the flag and because of this and because of, no, fool, I just told you why I'm doing it. But we do that. We do that as well. We make up our own narratives to why someone's doing it. Because some people would come to me and go, you're an active duty soldier. How do you feel about the kneeling? I say, it ain't got nothing to do with me. I go overseas and fight to give you the right to protest however you want to protest. And I am not in the business of telling somebody how to protest their pain. That is not what I'm in the business, because when I want to go against something, I don't need you up in my face telling me I'm doing it wrong. Right. So we got to watch our narratives too. The narratives are what hurts a lot of people.
Yeah. Hey, Larry, you want a caveat off of that, or have a comment on what Keone said?
Yeah. First of all, there were a couple of nice beaches over there. But
he said beaches, not bitches. Move your camera down a little bit.
Yeah, because I can't see me.
Yeah, you're good right there. Stay right there, and you're perfect.
Thank you.
No, I agree with most of what Keone said. It was a very ugly time, and quite honestly, it was, say, somewhat easier to stay over there than it was to come back home. I did 3 tours, and it was ugly coming back home. But because of that, I have been completely, and I admit it, I'm completely turned off on protesting. Completely.
Regardless of what it is for?
Unfortunately, I would say, regardless of what it is, I don't believe in protesting. First of all, you could have a peaceful protest, and there is a difference between a peaceful protest and a violent one. There's a big difference. But even a peaceful protest, you're disrupting, and I'm sure this is what the intent is, but you're disrupting other people's lives that have nothing to do with what you're protesting about. As an example, just recently, when they were blocking the freeway for whatever reason, I don't know what it was, and here was a man that needed to get to his work detail for part of his probation, and they were blocking him from getting to where he needed to be. Now, that's absolutely wrong. I don't care what your protest is about, what your thought pattern is. Stuff like that is wrong. And
oh, go ahead.
that's what turns me off on it, though.
I get Larry where Larry's coming from, but that's the part of the protest. It's the uncomfortability of when people are protesting. It's because a bunch of lives have been disrupted that nobody gives a bleep about.
Right.
So how do we get people to give a bleep about it? Because when everybody just ho hums, we got this thing today that says mind your business, stay in your lane. Nothing gets fixed that way. Everything that we have that is fixed this way is because somebody before us made uncomfortable decisions, made disruptive decisions. And this is not what Larry was saying, but I'm just giving examples. A lot of people's lunches and things they had to do was disrupted when the sit-ins happened. But we wouldn't have what we have today if the sit-ins didn't happen. You know,
had not happened, right?
A lot of people couldn't get to work when women were picketing because their wages were uneven or because they couldn't vote. A lot of people got to work late and was stuck up. But guess what? Now the women can vote, and now the wages have gotten better. So to Larry's point again, yeah, it really sucks. That's not the good part of it, but it's like that necessary thing that has to happen for change. That's the sad part of it. So I agree with you there on that part, Larry. That's the sad part about it. But if it doesn't happen, nothing changes. And when you protest too, you have to have people who don't look like you to make the change. If you're Black, you've got to have white people standing with you. If you're a woman, you've got to have men standing with you. If you're LGBT, you've got to have heterosexual people standing with you. If you're the only one in the fight that's in whatever section of life that society that you're in, it's not going to happen either. You've got to have other people in the fight with you.
I agree.
All right.
Deshaun, okay, go ahead, Larry. Go ahead.
Just one thing about what you said there, use as your example, protesting about wages. Now, you made the comment about some people got held up from going to work. They got there late. They probably got dock pay for being there late. And I bet you not a single one of those people had anything whatsoever to do with people getting higher wages.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, no, that's not true, Larry. Larry, that is absolutely not true, because remember, part of protesting, part of change comes through the political system. And whether we like it or not, every change still needs the support of a broader community. So that one individual, just by virtue of who they may have voted for, can impact or affect whether change is made. So I would now, if they choose not to participate, then they are not a part of anything. They're not a part of the political process. They're not a part of extending their voice. But the vote, which occurs by the public, in spite of how we go through, when we deal with our political system, it's got its flaws. But if I got enough people that began to agree and see the point of view and vote for the person that can make the change in a law, then they have participated in that protest, one form or fashion. It might not have been on the ground, but it occurred in the background.
Hold on, let me get. I got a question for Deshaun, because Larry and Lynn had said something that kind of jogged a thought in my head. Deshaun, do you think protesting brings accountability?
I think it does. I don't know which way though.
That goes to the Larry and Lynn both said an important thing, because both of what they just said proved what I was saying earlier about the effects. The thing that Larry is talking about is that surface thing that we always see, that we always see. What Lynn is talking about is that stuff that nobody talks about.
MRT.
The stuff that nobody sees. We focus on the visuals. And a wise man once said, Dr. Spock, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I look
The
at
needs of
people
the
who
few.
are, and again, I feel for people who are just, because there are people that look, I humdrum, I'm going to go about my life. I don't care about what's going on around me, blah, blah, blah. Well, they don't realize that they are actually part of the problem because they're being complacent in what's going wrong. If I watch Deshaun get smacked around every day and never peeped or did anything about it, I'm complacent in the behavior that I'm seeing that's going on. And again, that's your right to not be in it, but I just want people to understand when you see those things go, and then the anger. What I want is for people to have just as much anger as what the person is protesting for as they do about the protests. Be angrier about why they're kneeling instead of the fact that they're kneeling. Be angrier
Right.
at why are these women blockading my driveway and I'm trying to get to work. Be more angry at why they're doing it than they're doing it. That's the problem. Your anger is
Right.
misdirected. Be angry at why they're having, like, it's 2022 and we're still seeing things like the first woman to do this, the first Hispanic to do this, the first black, like, it's 2022. Can we get out of the first? Okay. But these
Right,
things are now
right.
happening because it's so backlogged
All right.
because of things that weren't able to be done. But what made those changes? You know what made those changes? White folk and black folk walking down roads, holding hands, singing songs, and holding up signs. That's what made the changes. If every single white person in America said, I ain't joining none of these Negro marches, we still wouldn't be in the pool.
Mm.
Right.
So you have to have people that are not complacent. And sometimes, and this is the sad part again, that's why I said I see Larry's point. We look at some of the marches and we watch the documentaries where you would see Caucasian people said, you know what? I had no dog in this fight. But when they saw on the news people being ripped apart by dogs and that horror, then the next thing you know what they did? They jumped on the bandwagon. So sometimes, and that's the sad part. That's where I agree with Larry in that part of why do we have to get to that point? You know?
Because we do. Yeah, but
Hold on, there's a little lag, Lynn. Hold on. Let Larry go and then we'll go, and then Sean will. Mhm. I'm talking about all of them. Kaepernick's the face of it, but I moved on from him. Yeah. Yes, and that's why we
Yes,
have to
yes.
do our research. He
Yeah.
did it
Yes.
before,
Mhm.
and what happened was he was sitting. He was sitting during the national anthem, and if everybody does their research, he's not the first athlete to sit during the national anthem. And it's not even just black people. There've been white people that have sat during the national anthem. And a Green Beret came up to him and said, "Don't sit. Sitting is disrespectful. Kneeling is indifferent." That's why in sports, what do they tell you? Take a knee. Anytime you go to teach, you say, take a knee. Taking a knee is indifference. So he chose listening to the Green Beret to take a knee instead of sitting. If there's anybody I'm going to listen to about patriotism, it's a Green Beret and not somebody else. So he took a knee. Now, hold on. Now he was kneeling and nobody gave two bleeps. He kneeled for a while. Nobody said anything. You know why? Because people in the stands, the same people in the stands complaining about him kneeling were on their phone texting during the national anthem. Okay. Until a reporter asked him, "Why are you kneeling?" And he said, "I'm kneeling because of police brutality and the bad policing with minorities in America." And instead of everybody being mad at that, they got mad at the kneeling. And that's why you had people, what I said about people that don't look like you need to be in the fight, That's why you had a bunch of people that did not look like him that started doing it. In other countries, soccer players, female basketball players who weren't black, and you had a lot of people doing it. So that is why I say that. The reason was given. Now, that was the start of that. I've moved on from that with all of the people. It got the conversation started. As much as we tried, as much as someone tried to derail that conversation into patriotism, it blossomed into something else and got it done. Now, what you don't see, we talk about the effects, right? What are the effects? Every time the bad cops, and I say that because I'm tired of people saying all cops, every time the bad cops used to do something, good cops could not say a word. Could not say a word. The police union would be on TV in 2 seconds. In 2 seconds, the police union would be on the TV. And now what do you see? When a bad cop does something, a good cop says something against it, and you don't hear anything from the police union.
Right. And that's the thing about protesting. People, you mentioned the surface and don't see below. It's the iceberg. People, when they're looking at the water, they see what's above the water, but they don't see below the water. There's like 300 feet of iceberg that's pretty much making up for what they see at the tip. And the iceberg is standing on the shoulders of giants. The iceberg is Martin Luther King, people that were fighting for wages, people that was fighting for people and for military personnel in Vietnam. They're below the surface. We are standing on their shoulders because we can say, okay, they did their job. We need to continue to carry the torch. Now, by carrying the torch, is it protesting? Is it a way of writing your Congress? Because isn't writing your Congress a form of protesting about your congressperson, a form of protesting about undue justice? Isn't protesting can be contacting somebody in your organization like HR about an unjust policy or unjust behavior or something that's happened to you. So protesting in the big scheme of things is, we're going to walk out, we're going to go up there, we're going to put our voices heard. But we still all do some type of protesting in our life.
Yeah.
It may not be as big as but when people think of protesting, that's what they think of. But we do protesting every day in our life when we need to make a complaint about something.
Look, when that bill, when you, everybody's been at that part where they didn't have a lot of money, and when that bill collector call you about that money, and what you do, you protest. I'm not paying that right now.
Yeah. So it's those little minute things. But when we look at protesting, we got to get out of thinking 1,000 people walking down the street. We all protest in some form or another to get our voices heard. Deshaun, what do you think about what I just said?
One second before we go to Sean,
Okay.
Let's get some of these comments from the audience in here.
Oh, yes.
Bryce White said, of course, they should be peaceful. We shouldn't need violence. We're right there with you, Bryce. Weenie says, a peaceful protest is most effective, but I have never protested before. Don't worry, Weenie, we'll get you in one. No, I'm just kidding. We won't. He also says, hit that like button for everybody watching this video. So thank you, Wheaton.
Thank you. Weenie.
Taz May said, that's the problem. People mix up the people doing wrong and say they are part of the peaceful protesters to make the situation seem bad, negative, used as a deterrent. Gregory says, I'm not plugging this because my name's in it. I'm just clicking by them. Gregory says, well said, Keone. Narratives have been a very important lesson to learn, especially the last few years. I only disagree with you, Gregory, because narratives, we just have social media, so we see these things more. All these things we complain about that's going on in society today, they've been happening forever. It's just we didn't have cell phones. So it was always one person's word against another. Bryce White says, but maybe their lives should have something to do with what's being protested. You're a granddad of a young girl running into a protest for abortion. what does that have to do with your life? So she's kind of well, I don't want to misquote her there. I don't know if she's kind of seeing both of our what if your granddaughter ends up running into that situation? Okay, I got it. So sometimes what she's talking about is we may complain about why something is being protested until somebody close to us is going through that same thing. And then now it makes
Right.
sense to us. And then we'll get to the last one and we'll go back to you, throw it back to the host. Taz says cause and effect. It's hard for people to think about the cause of the effect. All right. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm glad people are in here enjoying our conversations. Because we're not here being in disagreements. We're just all expressing our opinions and trying to understand where everybody's coming from and then giving our reasoning. So that's why if you came on here looking for a debate or people to argue and yell at each other and call each other stupid, you're on the wrong channel.
Thank you, Keone, and thank you for reading those comments and great comments. And going to Deshaun, I know that number one, Deshaun, have you been in a protest before?
No, I haven't. So
I think you said that.
No, I never had the experience of a protest. I always seen, on, like I said, on the news, and I maybe when I'm just driving by, I would see protests going on, but actually join a protest, and no, not
right.
But when you said about protests, because we protest every day in our lives, I can agree with that. Protesting, maybe with my business, or maybe with something that's maybe important to me, to let people know I'm doing this, support me, let's do this, whatever like that. So I definitely agree with you, Sean, when you begin to say that we protest every day in our life. Yeah, I agree. Yes, that is so true, because it's not just in a big thing.
But now, Deshaun, okay, are you calling it a protest when you're trying to promote your business?
No. That's just giving an example.
Oh, okay.
No.
I just want to make sure I heard that the right way.
No.
Hey, if you've gotten a divorce, you've protested. Damn, it got quiet in here. It got quiet.
I want to go back to, I really want to bring back up part of the discussion we had around some of Larry's comments, in that everybody's protest, the impact of protest on other people that are not involved. One key one, for example, I'm sorry, I'm old school, and yes, I got a few gray hairs. When you think about apartheid, the system of apartheid was broken down because the world stood up and said, this is wrong. People around the world stood up, and whether their voice broke it down or whether our protesting that impeded or demanded stock being pulled out of South Africa, goods being pulled out of South Africa. If it was a matter of impacting the country from an economic point of view in order to begin to break down apartheid for the people that live there, that's what came out of a global approach and protest against inhumanity. And so we have to look at, when you talk about the suffragette movement, that was women of all color, all shades, all variety, all size, standing up saying, we have the right to be paid just like anybody else. It wasn't women against men. It was saying we want fair wages. It happened that the comparison was to men. But all of that is important. All of the protests are critical to making change. If nobody raises their voice against injustice, nothing happens. Nobody stands up for it at any level, behind the scene, in front of the scene, on top of the scene. And that's part of why protests are valuable. We don't see the impact often right away. But
And sometimes
what's going
when
on
you,
now, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I almost ended up complaining about a protest once. I was in DC, and I was gonna go. I can't remember if I was gonna go to the History Museum, or I was gonna go somewhere, and I had bought my tickets already. And then when I went to leave my hotel, we couldn't get out of the parking garage because there was a protest going on. So I had to call the place. And the first operator I got says, "Well, we can't refund your tickets." And I'm like, "Well, what am I supposed to do? I can't move my car. There's a protest going on." And then when I called back, the person said, "This is DC. There are protests. We have protocol for that. You're fine. We'll refund your money." I almost got upset, but then I stopped and I said, why am I going to get upset? First of all, I don't even know what they're protesting about. And second of all, hell, I might need to protest about something. So I had to get back to my analogy of they're probably protesting something a lot bigger than I'm not getting to the place that I bought tickets to. You know, there's something bigger.
Money, right.
Yeah, there's something bigger going on, than me getting to the museum in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I'm on vacation. People say, but you're on vacation, you spent your money. But again, money's replaceable. I can go back to D.C. There's something bigger going on than Keone trying to get to the museum or wherever the hell I was going.
Well, yeah, but no, in that same sense,
Mm-hmm.
here you were trying to get to the museum,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very good place to go up there, by the way. But you were trying to get to the museum. Here's a protest going on, disrupting, for lack of a better term, disrupting your life and stop you from doing something like that. Now, did that protest do one thing to sway your judgment?
It was swayed before I even knew what the protest was, because like I said, it depends on how you evolve your mind. My mind was evolved to there's something bigger than me that's the problem. Everybody thinks there's something bigger than me going on than me trying to get reimbursed for $16. I'm not acting like $16 is some ridiculous amount, because there's people that work hard for $16, but there was something bigger than me going on that day.
Right. And you know what? And the funny thing is that whenever I see a protest, or if I'm inconvenienced on a protest, which I have been plenty of times, living in California at one point. I always
all by itself.
Exactly. So I always think about
Wait, Sean, Larry said I was 30 years old and this protest happened in front of me. Now look at me. That's how
See, I grew up in Southern California. So
yeah. I used to live in San Diego and in San Jose. So I lived, I've seen it on both ends. But whenever I see a protest, and as an African American Black male, whenever I see a protest and I feel this, you didn't know that?
Oh,
something. That's another topic. We're gonna
just thought you had a lot of fun. That's all.
Now, is that a pronoun?
I'm out. I don't want to play no more.
We're going to get canceled. Thanks, Larry. But what I was trying to say is that whenever I'm inconvenienced, I always think about the protesting prior that got me to the place where I can drive a car down the street and being able to be inconvenienced. I can come out of my house living in a mixed neighborhood for me to be inconvenienced. I can go to a job and make just as much money as my fellow white colleague for me to be inconvenienced. So whenever I am inconvenienced at a protest, I think of what has happened before me, and the reason why I'm again able to stand on the shoulders of giants to be inconvenienced. So so going back to you, Lynn, and I know that you had something else to say. Go ahead. What you about to say?
I'm done. I mean, I'm okay for now.
Okay, Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
She's got
Go
one
ahead,
in the
Larry.
chamber. It's just sitting there. She's got one in the chamber.
Spilling it.
No, I hear what you guys are
Actually,
saying.
I was going to say, Deshaun, you're going to have to come protest sometime, okay? You need to, that is experience. I would say that
So
COVID, for
he's holding the
example,
back. He's holding the back of his
challenged
neck like.
I've never been. This is something I just never. I've never thought I'd hear. Hey, I've been invited to birthday parties, weddings, bar mitzvahs. I've never been invited to a protest. So that
Miss Lynn, why would you say I need to
That's-
like try out protests? Why do you feel like I need to do it? Like,
it's an
No,
experience.
it's not about trying it to see what it feels like.
Mhm.
If there is if there is a cause or something that's important. I mean, like you may have just chosen not to be in the middle of it. I hope that your choosing not to be a part of a protest has nothing to do with your choosing not to take a position or a stand. You don't have to be in the march itself to take a stand, okay?
okay.
But many times there is value in numbers. The more people that our elected officials see that are saying no, they don't want this, put pressure on people, the more, and just to be able to stand up and say, hell no, is what sometimes people need to do. I will say to you that COVID brought about a tough situation for me because everybody was afraid to be outside. And I was thinking about, being around all these people. And I said, the hell with that. What we are protesting right now, the Black Lives Matter, is more important than whether I'm going to walk in fear. I'm just going to have to be cautious, do what I got to do. But it's important to stand up for what is not just around the country.
You know
That's
what?
important. Now, whether you do it on the picket line, out on the street, or whether you do and take a position at home, whether it's writing letters, calling a congressman, whatever, if that's your form of protest, that works too. I only say never let the opportunity to take a stand on something deter you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
know what?
Lynn.
You can be a part of the moment. Like you do it all day in your life, being a part of a movement, whether you know it or not, just by sometimes being yourself. If me and Larry were in a bar and somebody called me the N-word, he'd probably slap him before I did.
Sure, I would.
Yeah, and that's being a part of I'm not standing for this. This is not going to happen. So even you don't. Some people do things and don't realize, you're a part of the solution. You're being a part of the movement without even knowing you're being part of whatever said movement. If you're standing up for I have stood in customer service lines so many times and got on a customer for just being so disgusting towards a worker because they're at work in customer service. While everybody's popping up their cell phone, videoing this guy or woman that's going off on a team behind the counter, I'm the customer that's actually going to say something. That's me protested. I'm not standing for this. What are you doing? This is a child behind the counter who's 16. You're 38. Get your shit together. Okay. And all you adults ought to be ashamed of yourself for just sitting there because you don't want to be involved. Because if that was your daughter, if that was your son, and you heard that stuff, what would happen?
Well, now I got to tell you personally, I see a difference between that and a couple of thousand people marching down the middle of the freeway. And
It's not different. You know why? Because
I think there's
because let's say, Larry, let's say I gave that scenario, which is a very weird scenario, but me and Larry are from the South. Let's say me and you were at a bar. People have gotten off of work. They're having a good time. They're trying to blow off steam from their long week of work. There's people over here. Their friends are visiting from out of town, so they're at the bar. and some loudmouth comes up, disrespects me, and starts calling me racial slurs, and then you tell him to shut up and get into it, and now we're both up arguing, and there's a hoo-ha and hootenanny that happens. We just disrupted a whole bunch of people that were having a good time. But you know what's going to happen? I'm going to leave that bar, and I'm going to say, I love you, Larry, because you stood up for me. You know, but we disrupted the bar. We broke some shit that's going to cost them money to fix. I'm just saying, I know you're talking on a bigger scale, Larry, but it's kind of the same thing. We're still disrupting the flow of business and people's night.
But see, you do that, you can get out of the bar without having to pay your tab too.
So Larry, go ahead, Larry.
I'm just saying, I think there's a difference between what we're talking about right now and a big protest. See,
What's the difference?
In that scenario, I don't believe that's a protest. You're just standing up and helping defend a friend.
I'm gonna tell you what my grandfather used to tell me. He used to say, John Boy, just because you don't understand what it is, don't mean it ain't what it is.
Well, that's not a bad statement.
Hey, Larry, let me ask a question. Do you believe? Do you know what collateral damage is? Right. So, essentially, in protest, you are what we consider collateral damage, and collateral damage are the people who are upset because of these protesters. They're pissed off, and what you normally do if you're blocked in, you end up calling the police. You end up talking to your senator or your governor or whoever your state representative about why you are upset of this protest. That state senator, that state representative has one or two things: take down what you said, and then take it to the people, take it to everybody as a whole. You essentially created change without even knowing. So protesting is doing exactly what it needs to do because it's getting you to a point where you need to make a call and complain about what's going on. Even though you're complaining about you can't get out your garage, that person that you're complaining to is like, you know what? I need to figure out something so we can make sure that we all can have a kumbaya moment.
Especially if you voted for them, because it's like the people who voted me are complaining about these damn protests. We got to get rid of these protests. Well, how can we get to the protest? Well, let's solve the problem of why they're protesting. Right. So we can get people out of this man's driveway. First of all, I don't know why everybody protested in front of. I used the scenario shot. Everybody's protesting in Larry's driveway for some reason. Larry, what's going on in your driveway?
No, it was just
what's going on in your community, right?
No, his driveway.
What's going on in your community? Right.
We don't want to mess with my driveway now.
Hey, Larry, I wouldn't come to your driveway. I already know what you got at home.
Oh, yeah.
Larry
has told us, like, for instance, let's say this will never happen, but let's say they start to make a law where, hey, you know what? American citizens, you no longer are allowed to have guns. Okay, I'm doing a crazy hypothetical. I know it's in the Constitution, but let's just say, just for shits and giggles, no more guns. There's going to be protests of people to get their guns back. And that's going to be an inconvenience to me. But you know what? They got the right to protest to get them damn guns back.
Well, see, you got a guy in the White House now that can do that by executive order.
No.
He can, but he won't.
Because if he could, he would have did it already. It's not. Yeah, it's one of those talking narratives that we do to make people, to make us argue, but it ain't gonna happen. You know how many things they said Trump was gonna do, he didn't do, and that's not me supporting Trump. You know how many things they thought he was gonna do that he didn't do. So that's every president that comes in. It's let's scare y'all about this. That ain't happening. There would be, Lord, they think we protest horrible. Whew.
Oh, yeah, and there's a whole bunch of black folks that support the Second Amendment. So, Larry, you won't be protesting by yourself.
I can see Larry right now. My guns, come on. I'm waiting on you. Come on down.
Come on and take them. Yes.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden,
Right,
look,
but then Larry, what happens when that protest stops me from coming out of my driveway, and I look at it as if that ain't got nothing to do. Why they in my driveway?
I think Larry still doesn't like it. I think that was his point, was he still does not like protests, even if there's stuff that he supports. Am I wrong, Larry?
Agrees with.
No, that's exactly right. I think there's better ways to handle things than protests.
There you go.
Okay, that's just
There
my
probably would.
Mhm.
I would say, Larry, I would agree with you. There's always better ways. The point is that protests often, we get to the point of major protests when other ways have
failed.
not worked.
Mm.
Mhm.
That's the thing I was saying in the beginning. When something, people don't just wake up and say, let's protest this. Something has been happening for long enough time for people to
Right.
finally, because you got to remember, people protests aren't just just what are they, homeless? No, these people have jobs. They've got to take off work. They've got children. They've got things going on. So what the hell's been happening for so long that 9,000 people have to take off work for 3 days, travel somewhere, and protest about it? That's the part we don't think about as well. The people who are protesting are inconveniencing their own lives just as much as the people that they're in the way of. But
Right.
again, if it didn't create think about it like this. If it wasn't creating change, people would stop doing it.
Mm.
Right.
If it wasn't creating change, they just stopped doing it. They just stopped. But whatever was happening before did not work. You know how many times I
No, for
protested
me-
a spanking?
Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're wrapping up around the top of the hour, and I just want to go around the room and get everybody's final perspective about protesting. And we'll start with you, Deshaun.
Well, I ain't got too much to say because Ms. Lynn,
You do no research.
I don't got too much to say about this. So I'm just going to say, Ms. Lynn, I'm going to do some protesting, okay? Pass it on. Thank you. I'm good. I'm just going to do some protests, get some experience, and I'm good. Okay, we moving on next. Okay, I'm good.
I love you.
I love you too.
Okay, Lynn, what is your final thoughts about final perspective as far as protesting?
My final perspective, protests work. Protests become important when all else fails. I am certainly one that believes that if we can get to resolution without protest, fine. But when we cannot get to resolution, it is important. It is a constitutional right. See, that's the part that many times we forget, that the things that we are protesting were given to us according to the Constitution. They were just not acted out realistically. And we have to stand up and say, no, that ain't right. We believe we have the right to, we have to fight for it. We have to be citizens, not just for our own selves, but for our communities, our world, our nation.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Larry, what is your final perspective on protesting?
Well, it's slightly different than what I've heard, but
Yeah,
I,
I am so done today. Larry, you're the only person I can disagree with, and you still make me laugh.
that's what it's all about, right?
exactly.
Yeah, but no, I like I said earlier, I think a while back, quite some time ago, protests were needed. They were good. You mentioned Martin Luther King, or I think you did anyhow. But he accomplished this stuff without violence,
Right.
without burning and looting and stuff like that. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. Every protest turns into something like that. Now, I can see Keone probably didn't agree with me on that, but anyhow,
I think. Oh, I'm supposed to shut up. Sorry.
why?
It's your final thought. I'm not supposed to be saying anything.
All right, I give part of my time to you. What's on your mind?
Well, I think we do this thing in life, whether it's protesting or movies or anything. We remember everything nostalgically. Every protest that was led by him didn't end up peaceful. It wasn't always peaceful, but all we do is remember, I have a dream and everything. It wasn't always peaceful. No, it wasn't as violent as some of the other leaders' protests, but it wasn't always peaceful. They had people in there that did very peaceful things. And then what also happened to them wasn't peaceful. So I think we're remembering it a little nostalgically. We have already seen states who said no once Roe versus Wade was overturned, no abortions, but because of protests have already quickly made amendments for certain things or changed the law already just that quick because of protests. Protest isn't always marching in the street. Sometimes online, there's different formats of protesting. But again, you have to do your research because we're saying there's no effective change that's happened today with protests. We just had major prison reforms, major reforms in policing due to the protests of the last 3 to 4 years.
Right.
So it's still happening.
Yes.
The problem is, Larry and everyone listening, is we don't cover the change that has happened enough after the protest. It's like after the protest is over, it's like, okay, that's over. Next. And we don't cover all the systemic political ordinances, state laws, federal laws that are changed because of that said protest. And that's the part that people are missing. And unless they go look for themselves, they might not see the results. And so I agree with people who say, don't protest because it's not doing anything. It's because you're not seeing the results through your own means. And I'm going to shorten my part since Larry graciously gave me some of his time. Again, when you look at a protest, it says more about you than it does the protesters if you don't take a look at why. Why are they protesting? Don't look at the protests. Look at the why. Because I said this earlier, and I'm going to say it again in my final thought. A group of people don't just wake up and say, let's protest. The Irish didn't just wake up and say, let's protest. The Italians didn't just wake up and say, let's protest. African Americans, women's, gays, lesbians, whatever, Southerners, no one just wakes up and says, let's protest. There are things that keep happening. People are complaining about. People are trying to go to their legislator, going to their community leaders. And after it doesn't change for so long, break glass in case of emergency, and they go to a protest.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
don't be ho-hum-drum. When you see things that are wrong, be a voice for change, and then we won't need the protests.
Thank you. Thank you, Keone. And thank you for everybody that stated their final, my perspective, final thoughts and everything. But, you know, I look at this whole thing and I think of what John F. Kennedy stated, and he stated that without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. And when I think about that, I think that even at the lowest point, protesting has ended up helping all of us here on this show, because even if we believe it or not, protesting has protected our Second Amendment rights. Protesting has brought light to issues as far as racism, as far as the Title VII, equal disability, equal rights as far as race, religion, sex, creed, and everything. Protesting, regardless on what side of the fence you're on, has helped you in some way, form, fashion, or another. I think when we look at protesting, we need to look at it as, is it not inconveniencing me, but why are the people protesting? And if it is inconveniencing me, what can I do to make sure that it doesn't? So I'm just going to call I'm going to call somebody in my Senate. It's like, hey, I don't agree with this, and you need to figure out what to do because this is collateral damage. So I totally agree with everybody here what they said. If I especially Larry, because you brought up a lot of good things that I did not think about, and I truly thank you for that because I wasn't thinking. And believe it or not, I do have a lot of friends that think the same way that you do, and they look just like me, Black. So protesting. This is not.
Black.
Yeah, and you shit green. You shit color green. But I want to thank everybody here, and I want you to like, subscribe, and tell all your friends about this great show. Yeah, this was a great show, and we had a lot of great comments from
Don't
the
say
people
goodbye
out
yet.
there. Okay,
Everybody,
I won't
make
say
sure-
goodbye.
Before Sean says goodbye, because he gets the last word, because he's the host, make sure you check out Pretty Smart. It's going to come on at 9 p.m. Eastern. And the caveat to Pretty Smart, which is from a male's perspective, called Brilliant Swag, is going to come out in September. But tonight, Pretty Smart's at 9 p.m. And our new show, Dose of Dopeness, done by Ricky, who lives in Hawaii, 6 hours away from us. He will be doing his first episode tonight at midnight. Dose of Dopeness will come to you bi-weekly at midnight. So check those out tonight, and I'll throw it back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Keone. And everybody have a great Friday, great weekend, and we are out of here. Bye.
Bye. Party, drink.